I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Like, this is insane. That's why they say business deals happen on the golf course. That's how I keep it very homegrown Zambian, because there's always a story behind it.
3, 2, 1, rolling.
Kaajal, it's good to have you here. We've been speaking about doing this for months and months and months. So great to have you and welcome to the PodHouse.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure. Now, you are many things to many people, or different things to different people. So I kind of put a list together of the things that come to mind when I think of you, and it turns out to be a long list. So you're an activist, you're a fashionista, amazing content creator, fitness junkie, a model, and that list could be just the tip of the iceberg. But I want to start with this. You were featured in an epic production in the Maldives. You didn't think we noticed. For Qatar Airways. So let's start with two questions around that. Firstly, how was the experience? And secondly, anything you learned?
What did I learn? Well, first things first, it was absolutely mind-blowing. Like, to be on this set with this blue ocean behind me, to be paid to do this role was just mind-blowing. I'm like, what am I even doing here? It was just, I was so scared, to be honest, to be completely honest. I mean, small town girl from Zambia being on this huge stage. And I mean, I've modeled here in Zambia, I've modeled in the UK, but never at this scale. And, you know, to be on a world stage, there was a lot of imposter syndrome, I will say. Am I good enough for this? Can I do this? But I got some really good feedback and from my agency, and they all said I was really professional, and that was reassurance to me that I've done a good job. I think it helped coming from Zambia, because being here in Zambia, I've been exposed to so many different people from so many different backgrounds, and being on that set, people from America, Middle East, UK, they were all there, and to be able to conversate with everyone made the work a lot easier. I mean, I met models who'd done work with Hugo Boss. They'd done all these big campaigns, and there's just little old me. And they thought I'd been, you know, modeling for a long time. And I said, no, it's just been 3 years since I've been, you know, with my agency. So it was definitely one for the books. And what have I learned from it? Definitely to be humble. Okay. To stay professional always. Yeah. And more than anything, to just be yourself. Nice. So, it was a great experience. I mean, it wasn't even like a holiday, like a family holiday. It wasn't like a honeymoon of any sort. It was, I was on a set in the Maldives. I mean, it was crazy. So, I'm definitely happy it happened. And it was a good time, really good time.
It looked that way, and the final product was really well done. So salute to you and the team. How long were you in the Maldives for with the shoot, just out of curiosity?
Just 2.5 days.
So not that long.
I know, crazy. Yeah. My agency had called me on the Monday, and they asked me, are you free to travel on the Friday? Which obviously I said yes to. And we flew on Friday, got in late Friday night or so. Luckily, the other couple were filming on the Saturday. So mine was on the Sunday, so I managed to rest. And also with my diabetes, I had to take some time to sleep. Everyone else was going to the beach and biking. I took some time to rest, and then we filmed mine and my partner on the Sunday. And then we had a few more shots. And then after that, they were packing us off, and by Monday I was back in London. So a weekend in the Maldives.
No, it sounds like a total vibe. So Kaajal, you were born in the UK, but I'm sure if we sliced you up, your blood would be like red, black, green, the Zambian flag colors, because you're so patriotic. When did you come to Zambia?
So I came to Zambia when I was 3. I love Zambia. I mean, it grew me up. My whole life, I've spent it here. I went to Little Big Horn nursery, and then I went to Inkwazi school. And then when I was about 7, I went to ISL, stayed there till I was 18, and then went to the UK for university. But then I came back after 4 to 5 years of work experience. I mean, I wanted to start my brand, and I just wanted to come back home. I mean, who wouldn't? I love Zambia because it when I say it grew me up, it it's such an organic lifestyle, and it's kept my diabetes under control. I mean, I was diagnosed in South Africa, and coming back home, and I've always eaten fresh fruit. You know, we didn't have debonaires and all of that, you know, in the 90s. So for me, my sugar levels were under control by living here, being sunshine, organic lifestyle. So it was, Zambia's in my blood. I pay homage to it because I wouldn't be the happy, healthy person I am if it wasn't for Zambia.
Yeah, said like a true patriot. Your parents weren't born here, though.
No. My parents were born, well, my dad was born in Mozambique, and my mum was born in Kampala, Uganda. So my grandfather came from India. There were ships going to Kenya and ships going to Mozambique. I believe at that time they were trying to build the railroad. And so people getting on ships to seek greener pastures. And so my granddad came on that, and he already had his wife and 3 kids who were born in India at the time. My dad was the first in his family to have been born in Africa, and he was born in Mozambique. And I mean, he grew up in Mozambique, went to school in the UK, and built the business in Zambia. My mom, born in Uganda, got married to my dad in her teens, and then came to Zambia just right after the Idi Amin times.
That's fascinating. Okay, now before we talk about your own endeavors with fashion, I want us to talk about the legacy of your family. So City Clothing has been around for many, many decades, clothing generations of school children, and that's where the famous Kenneth Kaunda safari suit hails from. But what are your memories of the factory growing up?
So City Clothing was started by my dad and his brother in 1962. So way before independence, but I can take it back a generation before. So when my granddad came to Mozambique, he was a tailor, and he was making chef's uniforms for the chefs on the Rhodesia Railroad. And in payment, like in barter, he would be paid with food. And that food, he would be the man to go and get, meat, potatoes, vegetables, etc. So he was doing his business of tailoring clothing, and he was also doing this. And then as time went by, everyone on the trains said it would be safer to go inland because obviously you're on the coast, and, is it safe, natural disaster, all of that. So they went, and that's when the Rhodesia Railroad is going from Beira, Salisbury, which is now Harare, up to TZ. Okay. And so they actually started the business. City Clothing was actually first started in Livingston. It used to be called Imperial Tailoring, which then changed to Zambezi Tailoring, which is still there now. It's now a Zam Sugar Depot, strangely enough. So my uncle's still there, doing his own thing, and we first set up there. And then my dad went to university in the UK. He went and did tailoring, so he knows British tailoring. And then when he came back, him and his brother, I guess, fathers and sons, they want to go head to head with each other. So he said, I'm going to go to Lusaka because this is the place that's going to be the new capital of Zambia. So they found the location that City Clothing is now and set up with his brother there, and started doing school uniforms for most of the government schools, local schools. And then because it's a family business, there was obviously kids who were born after my dad, and then they grew up and they became accountants and all sorts. But in the 70s and 80s, there was this kind of uncertainty around the safety around Zambia. So a lot of them went to the UK to further study. They got married, etc. So it was just my dad and his brother here. And then the other brother decided to leave. So my dad stayed, and he's built and worked on the business since then. And that same location that you see City Clothing at on Freedom Way is where we started. So it's been there since 1962, and bits have just been added on, like the area which I do the embroidery in, like that used to be an accountant's office. But I also found recently paperwork, which my dad had showed me. That part, the whole of City Clothing actually used to be separate sections. So one was a scale business, one was a bar. And so my section, which has the embroidery department, was actually called the Flamingo Bar. So it's really strange that there's all these different stories behind City Clothing, but now that whole location's been added on little bits, and that's what you see now when you come in to get your uniforms.
Wow. So it's been like part of your story since birth.
And yes, I've grown up my whole life in that factory. I mean, if we were like most kids would, like in the afternoons after school, would just be at home playing with their friends. No, we went to the factory. Like my friend Abigail would come over and we'd play in those bales of fabric and we'd pretend like this is like our bedroom and this is our kitchen. And
like playing
we
house.
just, play and our imaginations went wild. So for me, growing up in those bales of fabric, hearing all the machines, the smell of like, fresh or old fabrics, it's just all I knew. And that's definitely played a part in my dreams and what I want to do. But also that just shaped me. I mean, watching my dad, this man who his whole passion, it's just his whole life. And watching him build something from scratch as an entrepreneur and really serve a nation with something that everyone needed, it's just been so phenomenal to watch. I mean, most people see Gary Vee and all these guys online saying, be obsessed with what you want to do. I've seen it since the age of 3 or 3 months, but I mean, it's too young to really realize that. But I've seen it from that age. And so it's in my blood to just be that way. I don't know any other way to be.
Yeah. All right, Kaajal, tell me, the Kenneth Kaunda safari suit and City Clothing, those two entities are interlinked. How much do you know about how the safari suit came about?
I have a very funny story about this. I was just chatting to Dad at lunch about this. So he decided to wear his safari suit when he went to the golf course. Now, he's an avid golfer and he played his game and he changed into a safari suit. Now, bearing in mind, City Clothing is always made straight-lined and very like straight cut, like collared shirts and tops. So he would make a short sleeve collared pocketed top, which was the safari suit. It's also slightly Indian as well in terms of design because it's like a narrow neck, but they change it to a collar.
Now that you say
and the fabric we used was a very light, I think the fabric actually came from India where we would have sourced it from. And so he played his golf game, changed it into his safari suit. And then in the 70s and 80s, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda would frequent the golf club. He was there quite often. And he saw my dad wearing what he was wearing and he's like, I like that. And we designed them. I mean, I know it's crazy because at the factory, I've seen old papers. It says Dr. Kenneth Kaunda from State House with his measurements signed there. I mean, it's pretty cool. So, yeah.
Wow, so your dad was the OG.
Dad wore it first.
That's fascinating. But while we're on the topic, what's your view on this whole story of the Kenyan parliament and this ruling about banning the KK safari suit in parliament? I mean, I don't know if they've updated it, but last I saw when the story popped was that they were banning it in parliament.
So my personal opinion is that they want to keep the KK suit for those at presidential level. I mean, I'm a huge believer that if you're going to wear garments from your country to represent your culture in parliament, you should. I mean, it really should. I mean,
totally.
That is something that you should be proud of. But I have a funny feeling that the guys who are higher in power want to keep themselves wearing what Dr. KK would wear because it's presidential level, and everyone else who's a delegate or just part of parliament should be wearing a suit. I mean, I would think like, why not wear a Chitenge suit or why not wear, kente cloth, whatever it is, but it doesn't have to be a KK suit. But if it's something that represents your culture, by all means you should. So, I mean, I've read these articles, they say it's 50-50, but I think it's that. I think they're trying to separate between, presidents and anyone else.
It's a unique perspective. I never thought of it like that. All right, now let's zero in on you. Please tell us a bit about your brand, about KC brand. So
KC brand has changed a lot over the years. I mean, I'm wearing a piece of mine right now.
Yeah.
But we first started with tailor-made suits. I was making them here in Zambia. I would take Chitenge and I would put it either on the lining, British tailoring, of course, because I was making everything in City Clothing. And I wanted it to have a touch of Africa and particularly Zambia. But then when I got stuck in the UK during the pandemic, as a creative, I was losing my mind. I was like, I need to create something, but how do I do it? Because I'm so hands-on with the tailors at the factory. What do I do? And so I decided to teach myself graphic design. Okay. And I obviously miss Zambia so much. I really like the Chitenge print. And I'd taken pictures of certain prints that I loved. So I played around with them and I created my own, i.e. this, and played around with the colors. And I worked with a factory that I found in Europe who was able to make smaller runs for me so I could still test the market.
Okay.
And I noticed during the pandemic, everyone was wearing like leggings, hoodies, just comfortable clothing. And I was like, why can't I just put my print on that? Because it's so boring wearing just a plain black, I mean, I'm wearing plain black leggings right now, but especially when I was in the UK, I was missing home so much. And I was at a point where if I'm going to wear a hoodie, I'm not going to wear a hoodie from, a high street retailer. I would rather something from home. And if someone had to ask me, what are you wearing? I'd say I'm wearing my country on my back because I missed home so much. So played around with colors, put it onto sportswear. I didn't even realize I was doing sportswear at the time. I was just making comfortable clothing.
Yeah.
And that's what slowly morphed into what I now call Athleisure. So athleisure with an African touch.
Clever.
And I made sure that everything is stretchy, it's comfortable, because that was a huge thing to me. I mean, I love chitenge, but it's stiff, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to stretch it, but it would keep me warm in cold weather, but it would allow me to sweat and absorb, like it's got wicking to absorb sweat in warm weather. And slowly, I started just testing other products and went into, men's shorts, women's sports bras, and it tied in really well with my love for going to the gym, because as a diabetic, I've always worked out. And to finally wear my favorite clothing that has print, I mean, I've not seen it before. So I just started creating what I wanted to see, and that's what KC brand is now.
Fantastic. I've personally been following your brand and your work on social media since I think I saw the DJ duo Creative Natives rocking the brand, the caps and the hoodies, and that's part of their signature. But now I notice you've expanded on to other things like bikinis and such with intriguing names within that range. So, we'll talk about that. The one thing that's unique about your brand is the colors. Maybe you could tell me a bit about that, the patterns as well.
Okay, so every color is based on Zambian nature. Again, I missed the organic lifestyle of Zambia, and nature is a huge healer to me. It keeps me calm. In Zambia we have blue skies and, so much greenery. So I was like, how do I bring that to me here in the UK? So for example, the purple here is jacaranda. And the first thing I think of is the street outside Pamodzi where it's just a carpet of jacaranda flowers. And it's like a warm purple. So that's the purple. The beige is the baobab tree, as mighty as the baobab tree. And I'm actually working on a new collection and the whole thing is beige. So also because right now in fashion, everyone's loving like the nude browns and light browns. So I was like, if I'm going to do like a nude light brown collection, it's going to be, and this is spoiler alert, it's going to be it, then I might as well use the baobab beige. And the green, it's based on the grass. Like we have so much greenery and so much like landscape here. It's the mopani tree, it's our grass, it's the leaves. So every color is Zambian flora and fauna. Naming. So this whole collection, I called it Zikomo because during the pandemic, we all know Zikomo means thank you.
Thank you, yes.
Now,
yes.
I wanted to have it's a two-way thing. So during the pandemic, I felt like a lot of my community may have thought I just left Zambia, like she left, she's gone to the UK. Little did anyone know, I just couldn't come back because of red lists. So during that time, obviously everyone had lost someone. It was a very trying time. People had gone into themselves. And I really wanted to play on the ideas like, well, what are you thankful for? Zikomo, it's not just thanks, but what are you grateful for in life? And it was also my way of saying to my community, thank you for waiting for me while I pivoted, because I needed to pivot during the pandemic. I mean, I've gone from suits to sportswear in a different country, so now I'm at a stage on this elongated trip where I'm actually able to bring my products back home. But during that time, that's the reason why I call the collection Zikomo. And the bikinis came out of nowhere, another product that I just randomly tested and put on my socials, and everyone's like, oh, I love them. So I was like, okay. So last summer launched the bikinis. Now, the first one I named it Basop. Now, in South Africa, they call it Basop, but over here we say Basop. Watch out. Because I wanted women to feel that when they wear it, they look so hot, like so good, that people are like, oh, watch out, Basop, like she's hot stuffs. There's another one called Shua, meaning Shua, she's nice, Oh, okay. And then the pink one, I actually love. Again, there was no print on it, no Chitenge print, or reinterpreted Chitenge print is what I call it. Solid pink based on the bougainvillea flower we get here. One of my favorites too. And I put on my stories, and every girl on my story was like, we want that pink. So I called it Ndalama because money. You're so hot, you look like money. Okay. So that's what each and every name is. It's something colloquial, something that we all know in our own little way. And if you're a Zambian in the diaspora and you see the products, you'll be like, oh, I have a story. I know why that's called that. Or you'll have a story behind it. Whereas if you're not from Zambia, you wouldn't necessarily know it, but you might just like the color. You might just like the print. So I just wanted to bring a piece of home to those who miss it out in the diaspora.
Now, one thing you've just spoken about is essentially pivoting, because you moved from doing one thing to another. And there are many entrepreneurs who might need to do like a self-audit and pivot in their own businesses to see if there's potential to grow in that way, to kind of move from doing one thing to another. What kind of advice would you have regarding pivoting?
So pivoting for me wasn't a real choice. It was
necessity.
It was a lifeboat for me. I really needed to move. I needed to make a change. So it's not like it was a choice for me.
Okay.
I say to young entrepreneurs, if what you're doing is not working, then you definitely have to move. I'm not saying mine wasn't working, but it wasn't working when I was in the UK. It didn't make sense. It was expensive. I mean, why am I making suits here to be sent that way? But if you've got a business that is running, keep building it and keep panel beating it as you go along, and be open to those not necessarily within your direct audience. Because if you can cross grow, you're going to open up to a whole new audience completely. But before you do, you have to have your foundations in place. Yeah. But pivoting, I mean, I don't know, if you run a car business, you could technically go into a pancake business too. I mean, or a food business, which is like right next to each other, because people, while they're waiting for their car, they can go and get food. But don't go into, I don't know, clothing and then say, I want to do hair. I mean, you think they're the same, but it doesn't really make sense, meaning hairstyling. Okay. It just...
So you have to be strategic in a sense.
It depends on the person as well. It depends on how courageous and bold they are. It depends on who you know as well, because if you have people who are already asking you for things, like, always be open to what the universe and those around you are asking you. If they keep asking you for something when you're doing something else, cater to them, because even if you have one or two customers and you do it really well, and it might be something different to what you're used to doing, but you have the means to do it. Firstly, you have to have the means. Then do it, and then that can build, because it might actually even do better than your current business, or it might work side by side with your business. But to always be open to listen to the markets, because at the end of the day, you don't want to just keep making what you want to make. At the end of the day, you're serving your audiences, you're serving your communities. What are you serving them with? You need to give them something that they want. True. Because at the end of the day, business is an exchange, and the exchange has to be something that matches you, because that's your secret sauce. But at the same time, it has to be what people need.
You're right. Business is about providing value. Now let's talk about Zambia's once vibrant textile industry.
Yeah.
What do you think went wrong? Because we used to be doing things, but now that's no longer the case. You're plugged into fabrics and fashion and textiles. What can we do to switch things around?
So I think we could still do such an amazing job by having our own ginneries in Zambia. I mean, I know in the 70s we did. I mean, again, old papers from City Clothing. I've seen KTZ, Kafir Textiles, Mulukushi Textiles. My dad would only buy and support local.
Okay.
And we were one of the biggest buyers of all the fabric that we were making here. But there was like far and few. There was us and maybe like Serios, who were buying in bulk.
Okay.
I don't think we had the economies of scale to sustain the business, which I think we have the minds to do it now. But I think back then, I don't think we were able to grow enough cotton. Maybe we didn't have the right skill set. I mean, think about it. Back then, flourishing business, obviously you're going to have your first set of money injected into it, but to sustain it, I don't think was possible. I mean, if you're going to buy 1 meter of cotton from Zambia versus 1 meter of cotton from India or China, landed is going to still be cheaper because there they have arable land. They've got a whole bunch of skilled workers. They have access to machinery and those who can actually fix the machinery. And also, they have huge populations, so they have economies of scale. So I think in the 60s and 70s, we may not necessarily have had that over here. But I believe right now, is it Mulungushi Textiles? Mulungushi Textiles is either run by the Chinese or they have more than, I think, 50% share, which is great if it's to resuscitate the economy. But I really don't like having outsiders running our own, country in that sense. What I think would be really great, I mean, we have arable land. And we have a whole generation of Zambians who are able to run things. If they can come in and just educate and train us.
Like
I mean, how many factories have they got here? I mean, like, they can show us how these machines are made.
Yeah.
We can manufacture the machines here. We have the arable land. We have the weather here. And we have, great minds. We can so build this over here. But I mean, if right now this is the way it's going, where they're just starting us off to resuscitate the economy for, manufacturing fabric here, it would make so much more sense. But if that's how it is, that's how it is. But I think that's what happened in the 60s, 70s. I believe we just didn't have enough economies of scale to sustain it.
Yeah, my fingers crossed things work out. All right, let's move on to your diabetes now. You were diagnosed at an early age with, I believe it's type 1 diabetes? It is type 1.
That's correct.
Evidently, I'm very unschooled in this. This is your opportunity to school me. First question is, I've seen your videos on like Instagram and TikTok, and once in a while you show us that jab, and I think to myself, ouch. So question 1 is it painful? Because you don't seem to flinch at all. And question 2, do you have to have that jab every day?
I have to do it every time I eat. So usually 4 times a day. But I mean, if I want to have a snack, I will have it, whenever I eat. It's not painful. I mean, the needle's like teeny tiny. It's like 4 millimeters, I believe. As long as you change your needle often, then it doesn't hurt. I mean, there's times where I'm just not supposed to not change our needle, but sometimes I do. And then then it hurts, and then it goes into the skin and sometimes into the muscle, and then it bruises me. But apart from that, no, it's okay. I mean, back in the day when diabetes was a thing, they would have like the big syringes, and thank goodness I don't have to do any of that. Teeny tiny needles, and it doesn't hurt at all. I mean, to be honest, I have to get on with it. I don't have a choice. But I mean, it doesn't hurt, not at all.
Well, that's good to know. You seem to be taking it in your stride, as I said. But educate me about the condition you're living with, like somebody who's never heard of it, perhaps.
Okay, so I do this all the time.
Teach us.
Okay, so type 1, which is what I have. So diabetes does come in different types, and I'm only going to focus on the main 2. There's other ones that have come up, but they're more like gray areas. So there's the main type 1 and type 2.
Okay.
I have type 1. There is no reason why it happens. My spiritual self says God chooses us. There's no, in my family, no one has type 1 diabetes. No one under the age of 10. I mean, I was diagnosed at 5. No female. So it's just an anomaly. And they say it could be like a viral infection, or you may have had some sort of traumatic experience, but I don't know what happened to me at 5. I mean, like, I was 5, so my parents looked after me. I mean, my mom wanted to be a nurse, and she didn't get to be a nurse because she got married to my dad and had kids and, married life. And suddenly she had to be on the call to South Africa, giving me injections, making sure I'm eating right, etc. And I was like, Mom, you got to be careful what you ask for because, you became my nurse. So she looked after me, and Dad was, at that time said, we need to go and get this girl checked, because they did try and diagnose me in the UK, but because I was in this honeymoon phase, and this is what happens with type 1 diabetes, is that the pancreas is still sending some sort of insulin out, and it's kind of like sputtering. But according to my bloods, I was okay. But then by the time, probably about 2 months later, there was definitely no insulin coming out of my pancreas, full stop. And then they took me to South, and that's when they first diagnosed me.
Okay.
Put me on insulin. My mom noticed a huge difference in me. She's like, okay, my daughter's the same. I mean, the first thing they noticed about me was I was losing a lot of weight. I was weeing a lot, and I was very temperamental, very like judgy. I'm sorry, not judgy, clingy to my mom. I mean, it was my sister's wedding at the time, and all my cousins were playing, and I just didn't want to go out. I was just holding on to my mom, and I was like, why is my daughter being this way? And like a mother's intuition is always, she's like, there's something wrong. As soon as they put me on insulin, like I was playing, I was my happy self. She's like, my daughter's back. So type 1, there is absolutely no insulin being produced, has to be injected, and it's not got to do with genetics or lifestyle.
Yeah.
Type 2, which is what is the most prevalent in the world right now. So out of all diabetics in the world, they say only 2% are type 1. The rest out of all diabetics would be type 2. And that's because of lifestyle. So if you are not active, you're eating junk food, just a sedentary lifestyle, you're going to, and they say, so in communities of color, so Black, Indian, Hispanic, and if you have a wide waistline, you're more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes, especially later in life. But what's happening, and what I've been noticing now, is there's this new young generation who have a little bit more disposable income compared to their grandparents and parents. So they'll go out and eat junk food. Also, it doesn't really help, like on TV and things, they're advertising, energy drinks and, Debonair's, KFC, all of that. No offense to these companies. But because they have more disposable income compared to their forefathers, on their Instagrams and their TikToks, they're showing, oh, I'm eating this, I'm drinking this, because it's cool. And it kind of shows that it's a rich lifestyle. But I say, I've lived a whole organic lifestyle. I've eaten apples and literally just picked fruits off the tree at home. That's a rich lifestyle because it's given me years on my life. But people don't realize that the sweets and the junk food and all of that is adding on to your propensity to be diabetic at a later stage. And what would happen at the age of 50 or 60 is now happening at 18, 19, 20. Because no one's educating, no one's talking about it, there's no awareness around it. So when you go to the doctor to get your bloods done, they'll check for everything except for blood glucose. And I think if I've got the stats right, it's in the top 10, diabetes in the top 10 of biggest disease killers in the world. I think it's number 6.
Okay.
And it's a huge epidemic. And in the few times I've come back and forth to Zambia, in the 10 years I've been here, every second person is asking me about diabetes, and this is type 2. And it's so reversible, especially when here in Zambia, we have such an organic lifestyle. It's so easy to go outside for a run. It's so easy to eat healthy. It's so reversible. So there's definitely a huge epidemic in diabetes, type 2, but it can definitely be reversed, and people get healthier so easy.
Yeah, thanks for the insight. Learning a lot. But what I've noticed is you specifically, you've made your life kind of like a resource of sorts for people who are keen to know about type 1 diabetes. You've got a separate Instagram account, for example, which is showing how you're living with type 1 diabetes. And I also see every once in a while you're speaking to audiences regarding this, and there's your book. How have you fine-tuned your purpose as an activist? Because I suppose you are an activist in this regard.
Yes. So I've been talking about diabetes for so many years. When was it? In 2019, I was invited by Dr. Lumbwe to this big conference in Livingston called EXACOP. And it was all medical professionals, and they had never had a diabetic who was speaking from an empowered point of view to explain what it's like for patients. Oh, okay. And it was great because they know what they deliver to patients, but I could say to them, listen, you give us XYZ, but this is actually what we need. We need ABCD. And strangely enough, a lot of doctors locally send their patients to me for the aftercare. It's like because let's face it, most doctors are not diabetic. Yeah. So as much as they are telling everyone how to take their medicine, they almost scare them off. They're like, well, if you don't take your medicine and if you eat some cake, your sugars will go high and you'll have a leg cut off. I mean, I understand why they're saying that, but it's scary, and we're all human, and we need someone who has gone through it so that they can relate to it. So that's what I do. I mean, I went to my school. I've talked about diabetes. I have released a book, so
there it is.
This little cutie here, and
very cute.
It's just a basic little book with basic information. He's a jelly bean. Jelly beans full of sugar, and he goes on a journey to figure out how to handle he's just been diagnosed, so how to handle his diabetes and live his bestest life. So he goes through a little forest and he meets an insulin pen, carb counter, blood glucose checker, and it was just a good way for me to share basic information, not just to kids, but also to caretakers of. Because again, those who are around diabetics also don't know how to handle things. They don't know why their brother, daughter is irritable. They don't understand why what is a high sugar? What does it do to your body? So me, as a person who's lived through it for 20, 30 plus years, I know what it feels like. And this character, I mean, it starts off with him feeling really sad that he can't eat a piece of cake at a birthday party. That's me. Like, I've been through that. Growing up, there was so many, I mean, I didn't feel it at home. To be honest, my parents made me feel like I was golden child, and I believe every parent's going to make their child feel that way. But when I stepped out of my house and I went to a birthday party, and I remember my mom was explaining to the other girl's mom, saying, this is my daughter's sandwich and crisps, etc. I saw the other kids looking at me, and that's when I realized I'm different. And it was a hard lesson, and I don't want another generation to go about feeling there's something wrong with them, because there isn't. I mean, diabetes is not even a disease, it's a condition, it's a part of life. And if we know how to handle it, I really believe there'll be a day when we can either eradicate it, or there's going to be ways where it's just normal. And so right now I'm doing a lot of work with my advocacy here in Zambia, trying to do a lot of workshops. So I did a workshop a couple of weeks ago where the mums of diabetics met up, because that's a different stress in itself. So they met up, and I'm trying to do more workshops where diabetics can meet up and talk about mindset. We can talk about how to check your bloods, the types of food to eat. And it's through my life. I mean, as I said, I don't want another generation to go through, I'm not saying I went through a bad time, but the things I learned over so many years, why should other people go through that over their many years when they can live a full life? Because I do so much. I mean, modeling to designing to traveling, nothing has stopped me. Diabetes hasn't stopped me. So nothing should stop someone who's being diagnosed. And there's a lot of stigma around it, a lot of people feel like when they've been diagnosed with diabetes, it's like, oh my God, it's a death sentence. I've heard so many stories. It's like, oh, if you've been diagnosed, you can't have children. Don't get married to that person. There's so many,
like false
especially in communities of color, and that's who I'm focusing on. They're just irrational thoughts around diabetes. And unfortunately, because it's gotten to a stage where there's not enough awareness, so then people get to their diagnosis late. And by the time it's too late, then they're having, legs cut off and fingers cut off. Then people see it as a devil's disease. They see it as a very scary, place, and then we don't talk about it because we don't have the resources to bring awareness. And that's why I want to be a resource, because then I always say it's like a cut. If you don't bring a cut to air, it's not going to heal. So the less we talk about it, the less we're going to heal it in our communities. So the more we talk about it, people are like, actually, no, it's not a devil's disease, or it's not a death sentence. Actually, it's manageable, because if she can do it, so can I. And that's my aim. I want us to be able to live fully with anything, any limitation, not even diabetes, just to live full lives despite anything coming towards us.
Yeah. Well, Kaajal, thank you so much once again for coming through to the PodHouse. I mean, I've learned so much, and we'll put all your social handles on the screen so people can follow you and be inspired, because you are an inspiration, and we salute you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.